The black hole was beautiful. That was the first thought in Captain Park's mind as he stood on the bridge of his ship, the eternal dawn. Through the thick glass of the observation window, he could see the massive swirl of light and dust spinning around a darkness so complete that it seemed to swallow everything. Orange and red streams of gas circled the void like water going down a drain. It was the most dangerous thing in the universe, and also the most beautiful. "Captain, all systems are normal," said from her station. She was the ship's physicist, a young woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. Her job was to study the black hole and understand its secrets. "We are holding position at a safe distance." Nodded but did not look away from the window. The Eternal Dawn was a research vessel, sent by Earth to study the black hole known as KR7741. It had taken them 3 years to reach this place, traveling through the empty darkness between stars. Now they floated at the edge of something that could crush their ship into a point smaller than a grain of sand. Behind him, the bridge was alive with activity. 12 crew members worked at their stations, monitoring data and keeping the ship running. There was the chief engineer, a large man with rough hands and a calm voice. He had kept the ship's engines running through every problem they had faced. There was Han, the doctor, who cared for the crew's health with gentle skill. There was Young, their pilot, whose quick reflexes had saved them more than once. And there was Song Ara, the communications officer, who kept them connected to Earth across the vast emptiness of space. And then there was the youngest of them all. She was only 24, a junior engineer who had earned her place on this mission through pure brilliance. She rarely spoke, but when she did, everyone listened. "Captain," said suddenly, his voice tight with concern, "I am reading something strange from the engines." Turned from the window. "What is it?" Before could answer, the ship shook. It was not a gentle shake. It was violent, like a giant hand had grabbed them and tried to tear them apart. Alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across every wall. "Engine failure," shouted, his fingers flying across his console. "The main drive has gone offline. I do not know why." Grabbed the railing to keep himself standing. "Get it back online, now." "I am trying, Captain, but something has damaged the core. I cannot restart it." The ship shook again, and this time it did not stop. Through the window, saw the black hole growing larger. They were moving toward it. "We are falling," said, her voice quiet but filled with fear. "The black hole's gravity has caught us. Without engines, we cannot escape." Felt cold spread through his chest, but he pushed the fear down. He was the captain. His crew needed him to be strong. "What about the emergency thrusters?" "They are working, but they are not strong enough to escape the gravity well." "Can they slow us down?" Paused, running calculations in his head. "Maybe. If we fire them at the right angle, we might be able to enter a stable orbit, but it will be close, very close to the event horizon." The event horizon, the point of no return. If they crossed it, not even light could escape. They would be pulled into the singularity and crushed into nothing. "Do it," ordered. And worked together, their hands moving in perfect coordination. The emergency thrusters fired, and the ship groaned like a wounded animal. Could feel the pull of the black hole in his bones, a weight pressing down on every part of his body. "Come on," whispered, gripping his console. "Come on, come on." For a long moment thought they would fail. The black hole filled the window now, a circle of absolute darkness surrounded by a ring of fire. He could see nothing beyond it, nothing at all. Then slowly the ship stopped falling. They were still moving, but now they were moving in a circle, not a straight line. They had entered orbit. "We did it," said, her voice barely a whisper. "We are stable." The crew let out a breath they had all been holding. Some laughed nervously. Others wiped tears from their eyes. They were alive. But did not celebrate. He was looking at, who was staring at her console with a pale face. He said quietly, walking to her station, "What is wrong?" She looked up at him and he saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. "Captain, do you know what happens to time near a black hole?" He knew, every schoolchild knew. It slows down. Yes, the closer you are to a black hole, the slower time moves for you compared to the rest of the universe. She pointed at her screen, which showed numbers that meant nothing too. "We are very close to the event horizon, closer than any human has ever been. At this distance, time dilation is extreme." "How extreme?" Swallowed hard. "For every hour that passes for us here, approximately 400 years will pass in the outside universe." Felt the words hit him like a physical blow. 400 years, for every hour. "Earth knows our position," he said slowly. "They will send help." "Yes," agreed. "But even if they send a ship immediately, even if that ship travels at maximum speed, it will take them years to reach us. And for every year that passes for them." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Looked around the bridge at his crew. They were still smiling, still relieved to be alive. They did not know yet. They did not understand that they had escaped death only to be trapped in something worse. He made a decision. He would not tell them, not yet. They needed hope right now. They needed to believe that rescue was coming. "Everyone listen to me," he said, his voice strong and steady. "We are alive. The ship is damaged but stable. Our job now is to survive and wait for rescue. Earth knows where we are. They will come for us." The crew nodded, trusting their captain, trusting his words. Turned back to the window and looked at the black hole that had become their prison. Somewhere out there, beyond that ring of fire, the universe was moving forward without them. People were being born and dying. Cities were rising and falling. History was happening. And they could only wait, trapped in a bubble of slow time, while the rest of existence left them behind. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer to whatever might be listening. "Please," he said, "do not forget us." The first day was the hardest, not because of the danger but because of the silence. The eternal dawn drifted in its impossible orbit, and inside, the crew tried to understand what had happened to them. The engines were dead. The main power was running on backup, and outside their windows the black hole spun endlessly, a reminder of how small they truly were. Captain Park called a meeting in the common room. All 12 crew members gathered around the long metal table, their faces tired and scared. Some had not slept since the accident. Others had tried but failed, kept awake by nightmares of falling into the darkness. "I will be honest with you," said, standing at the head of the table. "Our situation is serious. The main engine cannot be repaired with the parts we have. We are trapped in orbit around the black hole until rescue arrives." "How long will that take?" asked the pilot. He was young, only 28, and this was his first deep space mission. Looked at, she had agreed to help him explain the situation, though neither of them wanted to speak the full truth. "We do not know exactly," said carefully. "Earth received our distress signal before we fell. They know our position, but the distance is very great. It could take some time." She did not mention the time dilation. Neither did, not yet. "What do we do until then?" asked Han, the doctor. She was a calm woman, always thinking of others before herself. "We survive," said. "We ration our food and water, we keep the ship running, and we wait." The crew accepted this. They had no other choice. The hours passed slowly, or perhaps they passed quickly. Near a black hole, time became strange. The clocks on the ship worked normally, but everyone felt like something was wrong, like the universe itself was holding its breath. Song Ara spent every waking moment at her communication station. She sent message after message toward Earth, calling for help, begging for a response. But her signals stretched and bent as they escaped the black hole's gravity, becoming so distorted that they were almost unreadable, and any response from Earth would take even longer to reach them. "Anything?" asked her on the second day. Ara shook her head. Her eyes were red from staring at screens. "Nothing yet, Captain, but I will keep trying." "I know you will." in the engine room and worked without rest. They tore apart broken systems and tried to rebuild them. They searched for any way to restart the main engine, or at least boost the power of the emergency thrusters. But the damage was too severe. "It is like trying to fix a broken heart with tape," said one knight, wiping grease from his hands. "The core is cracked. Without a new one we cannot fly." Sat beside him, her small hands covered in oil. She was exhausted, but she would not stop working. "There must be something we can do." "There is," said. "We can keep the life support running. We can keep the lights on. We can make sure everyone stays alive until help comes." He put a heavy hand on her shoulder. "That is enough. That is everything." On the third day, found alone in the observation room. She was sitting on the floor, staring at the black hole through the window. The light from the accretion disk painted her face in shades of orange and gold. "You should sleep," he said, sitting down beside her. "I cannot," she replied. "I keep thinking about the numbers. The time dilation." She nodded. "I calculated it again and again. Hopping, I made a mistake." She laughed bitterly. "I never make mistakes. That is why they sent me on this mission." Was quiet for a moment. "How much time has passed outside?" "We have been here for approximately 26 hours, subjective time." She turned to look at him, and he saw tears on her cheeks. "That means over 10,000 years have passed in the rest of the universe. Everyone we knew is dead. Earth itself might be completely different. We are—" She stopped, unable to continue. "Alone," finished for her. "Yes." They sat together in silence, watching the black hole spin. The light was beautiful even now, even knowing what it had cost them. "Should we tell the others?" asked finally. Thought about his crew. He thought about who talked constantly about his younger sister back home. He thought about Ara, who had promised her mother she would return safely. He thought about all of them, holding onto hope like a lifeline. "Not yet," he said. "Let them have a little more time. Let them believe rescue is coming." "But it might not come. 10,000 years, Captain. Human civilization could have fallen. They might not even remember we exist." Stood up and offered his hand to help her rise. "Or they might remember us forever. We do not know what happened out there. All we know is what is happening in here. And in here we are alive. We are together. And we are not giving up." Took his hand and stood. She wiped her tears away and straightened her back. "You are right. I am sorry. I should not have." "You are human," interrupted gently. "You are allowed to be afraid. We all are." They walked back to the common room together. The crew was gathered there, sharing a meal of rationed food. Someone had told a joke and they were laughing. The sound filled the ship like music. Looked at their faces. Eating quietly with his usual calm, checking on everyone's health even during dinner, telling an exaggerated story about his pilot training. Ara, smiling for the first time since the accident, listening with wide eyes, her food forgotten. They were afraid, they were lost, they were trapped at the edge of oblivion. But they were still human, and humans did not give up. Sat down at the table and accepted a bowl of soup from. It was thin and tasteless, but he ate it with gratitude. "Captain," said, grinning, "did I ever tell you about the time I crashed a shuttle into my instructor's office?" "No," said, allowing himself a small smile, "but I think you are about to." The crew laughed, and for a moment the black hole outside did not matter. For a moment they were just 12 people sharing a meal and telling stories. For a moment they were home. Outside, 10,000 years had already passed. Empires had risen and fallen. Stars had been born and died. The universe had moved on without them. But inside the eternal dawn, time moved slowly. And in that slow time, the crew held onto each other and onto hope. They did not know if anyone was coming. But they would wait anyway. Because that was what humans did. On the fourth day, something changed. Song Ara was asleep at her station when it happened. She had refused to leave her post for 3 days, sending signals into the void, hopping for any response. Finally, exhaustion had won, and she had fallen asleep with her head resting on her arms. A sound woke her, a soft beeping from her console. At first she thought she was dreaming. She had dreamed of that sound so many times, but when she opened her eyes, the light on her screen was flashing green. Incoming signal. Her hands shook as she pressed the buttons to receive it. Static filled her ears at first, then slowly, a voice emerged from the noise. It was distorted by the black hole's gravity, stretched and bent like light through water, but it was there, a human voice. Vessel Eternal Dawn, this is, remembrance, your position, extraction. Ara screamed. The sound brought the crew running. They poured into the communications room, still half asleep, their eyes wide with confusion and hope, pushed through them to reach Ara's side. What is it? What happened? Someone is coming, Ara said, tears streaming down her face. Captain, someone is coming for us. For a long moment, no one moved, then let out a shout of joy and grabbed, spinning her around. Fell back against the wall, his usual calm replaced by shock. Covered her mouth with her hands, sobbing quietly. Even, who had carried the terrible knowledge of their true situation, allowed herself to hope. Took the communicator from Ara's station. This is Captain Park of the research vessel Eternal Dawn. Please repeat your message. The static crackled, and then the voice came through more clearly. It was a woman's voice, warm and strong. Captain Park, this is Fleet Admiral Moon of the HSS Remembrance, representing the Human Stellar Concordance. We have your position locked. Prepare your crew for extraction. We are coming to bring you home. The Human Stellar Concordance did not recognize the name. There had been no such organization when they left Earth, but he did not care. Someone was coming. That was all that mattered. Understood, Admiral. We will be ready. Through the observation window was the first to see it. A point of light appeared in the darkness, growing brighter and larger with impossible speed. Then space itself seemed to fold and twist, and from that folded space emerged a ship. No, not just a ship, a giant. The remembrance was larger than anything had ever seen. It stretched across the stars like a city floating in the void. Its hull was smooth and white, covered in symbols that were clearly human but designed in ways he did not recognize. Lights glowed along its surface like 1,000 windows. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. How? Whispered beside him. How is that possible? The engineering alone would require 10,000 years of progress, said quietly. He had finally told the crew the truth about the time dilation. They had taken it better than he expected, or perhaps they were simply too amazed by what was happening to feel grief yet. The remembrance stopped near them, and smaller vessels emerged from its side. They surrounded the Eternal Dawn like protective guardians. Then something even more amazing happened. The black hole's pull began to weaken. They are manipulating gravity, said, her voice filled with wonder. They are actually manipulating gravity. That should not be possible. The energy required would be enough to power a sun, finished a new voice. It came from the airlock, where a door was opening that had not opened in 4 days. Standing in the doorway was a woman in a white uniform. She was tall and strong, with gray hair cut short and eyes that held the weight of responsibility. Behind her stood a team of people in similar uniforms, carrying equipment and supplies. Captain Park, the woman said, stepping onto the bridge of the Eternal Dawn. I am Fleet Admiral Moon. On behalf of the Human Stellar Concordance and the 12 billion souls who call themselves human, welcome home. Tried to speak, but his voice would not come. He had been strong for his crew for 4 days. He had carried the knowledge of their lost time alone. He had forced himself to hope even when hope seemed foolish. Now standing before this woman from a future he could not imagine, his strength finally broke. Tears fell from his eyes, and he did not try to stop them. You came, he managed to say. You actually came for us. Admiral smiled. and there was warmth in her expression that crossed the 10,000 years between them. "We never stopped looking," she said. "From the moment your signal reached Earth, humanity made a promise. We would bring you home. It took us time. We had to learn things we did not know. We had to build things we could not imagine. We had to become more than we were." She reached out and placed her hand on shoulder. "But we never forgot you, not for one single day of those 10,000 years." The crew of the Eternal Dawn was led onto the Remembrance. They walked through corridors of light and wonder, past technology that seemed like magic. They saw windows that looked out on stars in colors they did not recognize. They heard music that was strange but beautiful. They smelled food that made their mouths water after days of thin rations. Everywhere they went, people stopped to look at them, not with curiosity or confusion, but with respect, with reverence. "Why are they looking at us like that?" asked quietly. A young officer walking beside them answered, "You are the crew of the Eternal Dawn. Every child learns your names in school. There are statues of you on 100 worlds. You are heroes." "We did not do anything heroic," said. "We just survived." The officer shook his head. "You fell into the darkness and you did not give up. You held on when holding on was all you could do. And because of you, humanity learned that no distance is too far and no time is too long." He smiled at her with genuine emotion. "You taught us to never abandon our own. That is the most heroic thing anyone has ever done." Had no response. She simply walked forward, her eyes wide, trying to understand a universe that had changed while she slept. That night, the crew of the Eternal Dawn was given quarters on the Remembrance. They had real beds, real food, and real hope for the first time in what felt like forever. Stood alone at a window, looking out at the black hole that had been their prison. It was smaller now, shrinking in the distance as the Remembrance carried them away. He thought about all the time that had passed, all the people who had lived and died, all the history that had happened without them. Admiral found him there. "You should rest, Captain." "I know I will soon." He turned to look at her. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." 10,000 years is a long time. Civilizations rise and fall in less time than that. How did humanity survive? How did you grow so strong? Consider the question carefully before answering. "We almost did not," she admitted. "There were wars, there were disasters, there were times when we nearly destroyed ourselves." She moved to stand beside him, looking at the same stars he was watching. "But every time we came close to the edge, someone would remember the Eternal Dawn. Someone would say, if they can hold on, so can we. Your story became our story. Your hope became our hope." She turned to face him directly. "You saved us, Captain. You and your crew. Not through any grand action, but simply by refusing to give up. That is the most human thing there is. And it is why we came for you, because humanity does not abandon its own." Looked back at the distant black hole. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything." Smiled. "Welcome to the future, Captain. I think you are going to like it." The Remembrance traveled through space in ways the crew of the Eternal Dawn could not understand. Stars blurred and stretched outside the windows. Colors that should not exist painted the void. And then, suddenly, they stopped. "Where are we?" Captain Park asked, standing on the observation deck with his crew. Admiral Moon stood beside them, her hands clasped behind her back. "We are at the edge of the Sol system, your home system." She pointed through the massive window. "There, do you see it?" Looked. At first, he saw nothing but stars. Then he noticed one star that was brighter than the others. It was yellow and warm, and looking at it made his chest tight with emotion. "The sun," he whispered. "Yes, and there," pointed to a small blue dot near the yellow star, "Earth." The crew gathered at the window, pressing their hands against the glass like children looking into a candy store. Some of them cried, others laughed, simply stared, her mouth open, unable to speak. "It is still there," said. "I was afraid. I thought maybe." "It almost was not," admitted. "There were times when we nearly lost it. Wars, climate disasters, asteroid impacts, but humanity learned. We protected our home, and we spread to other worlds so that if one home was lost, others would survive. Other worlds asked, how many? Smiled. Currently, humanity lives on over 4,000 planets across 3 galaxies. Our total population is approximately 12 billion people. The number was too large to understand. Tried to imagine 4,000 worlds, each with cities and farms and families. He could not do it. His mind simply was not big enough. We will take you to Earth first, continued. There are people who want to meet you, many people. The journey to Earth took only a few hours. Along the way, the crew was shown records of human history. They sat in a room filled with floating images and sounds, watching 10,000 years pass in moments. They saw humanity's darkest times, wars that killed billions, diseases that swept across worlds, moments when it seemed like everything would end. But they also saw humanity's times, the first colony on Mars, the first journey to another star, the moment when humans met another intelligent species for the first time and instead of fighting, chose to become friends. They saw cities rise and fall, empires grow and shrink, ideas spread and change. They saw art and music and science evolving in ways they could never have imagined. And through it all, they saw themselves. This cannot be real, Han said, staring at an image of a massive statue. The statue showed a woman in a space suit, her hand reaching toward the stars. The face was her face. It is very real, said. That statue stands on the planet New Sol in the Garden of Remembrance. It was built 2,000 years ago to honor your sacrifice. But I did not sacrifice anything, protested. I just did my job. You did your job when doing your job meant facing death without flinching. You cared for your crew when caring meant giving your own food to others. You held people's hands when they were afraid. His voice was gentle but firm. That is sacrifice, Doctor. That is heroism. Similar monuments existed for all of them. There was an engineering school named after, where the best minds in humanity learned to build starships. There was a pilot training academy named after, where young people learned to fly between stars. There was a communication network named after Ara, which connected all of human civilization across unimaginable distances. And there was a physics institute named after. When she learned about it, she asked to see her original research from 10,000 years ago. We saved everything, told her, displaying the old files on a screen. Your equations, your notes, your theories. They were incomplete when you sent them, of course. You did not have time to finish before the accident. Looked at her old work, written in her own handwriting, preserved perfectly across. She remembered writing these equations in her small cabin on the eternal dawn, trying to understand the black hole that would soon trap them. What happened to them, she asked. My equations. Other scientists continued your work. It took them 300 years to solve the problems you had started, but when they did, they discovered something amazing. Your equations showed how to manipulate gravity itself, how to fold space, how to travel faster than light. Gestured at the ship around them. This ship, every ship in our fleet, uses technology based on your work. You made all of this possible. Sat down heavily, overwhelmed. I never finished it. I never even came close. You started it, that was enough. The rest of us did the finishing. When the Remembrance finally reached Earth, the crew was taken to the surface in a smaller ship. They descended through clouds and saw cities of light spreading across continents. The air was clean, the oceans were blue, and green forests covered lands that had once been deserts. We healed it, explained. It took us a long time, but we healed our home. They landed in a city that had once been Sol, recognized the mountains in the distance, though everything else had changed. The streets were filled with people who had come to see them. Millions of people, cheering and waving and crying. Captain Park, they shouted, welcome home. walked through the crowd with his crew, shaking hands, accepting hugs from strangers, trying to understand how any of this was happening. These people did not know him. He had been gone for 10,000 years, but they loved him anyway because of stories they had been told, because of a promise their ancestors had made. That night there was a celebration. The crew of the Eternal Dawn sat at a long table filled with food from 100 worlds. Leaders and scientists and artists came to meet them. Everyone wanted to hear their story. "What was it like?" a young girl asked, "being trapped near the black hole?" Thought about the question. "It was scary," she admitted. "We did not know if anyone would come. We did not know if humanity even still existed. All we could do was wait and hope." "But you did not give up." "No, we did not give up." The girl smiled. "That is why you are heroes." Later, when the celebration had quieted, found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights below stretched to the horizon, and above him, the stars burned with the same light they had burned 10,000 years ago. Joined him. "How do you feel, Captain?" "Lost," he admitted. "Everything I knew is gone. My family, my friends, my world. I am standing in a future I cannot understand, surrounded by people who think I am a hero for simply not dying." "That is not why they think you are heroes." "Then why?" Leaned against the railing beside him. "Because you showed us what humanity can be. You were 12 ordinary people trapped by circumstances beyond your control. You had every reason to give up, but you did not. You supported each other. You maintained hope. You survived." She turned to look at him. "For 10,000 years, whenever humanity faced something difficult, we remembered you. We asked ourselves, what would the crew of the Eternal Dawn do? And the answer was always the same. They would hold on. They would keep trying. They would never abandon each other." She straightened and gestured at the city below. "All of this exists because of that. Because 12 people in a broken ship, drifting at the edge of a black hole, refused to give up. That is why you are heroes, Captain. Not because you did not die, but because you taught us how to live." Was silent for a long moment. Then he asked, "What happens now?" "Whatever you want. You have given humanity 10,000 years of inspiration. Now it is our turn to give something to you. New lives, new purposes, new futures," she smiled. "The universe is very big, Captain, and it is waiting for you." Looked up at the stars. For the first time since they had fallen into the black hole, he allowed himself to imagine tomorrow. The weeks after their return were the hardest of their lives. The crew of the Eternal Dawn had survived the black hole, but surviving the future was a different challenge entirely. Struggled the most. He spent his first week on Earth searching through historical records, looking for any trace of his family. His younger sister had been 15 when he left. She had promised to wait for him. He found her grave on the third day. She had lived a long life, married, had children, and she had become a famous writer, and her most beloved book was called Waiting for Stars. It was about a girl whose brother went to space and never came home. Read the book alone in his room. He cried until he could not cry anymore. Then he read it again. On the last page, his sister had written a dedication. "For my brother, wherever you are, I kept my promise. I waited every day of my life. I hope you found your way home." He closed the book and held it against his chest. "I did," he whispered to no one. "I came home." Song Ara visited the place where her mother's house had once stood. The city had changed completely, but the mountains in the background were the same. She stood there for hours, remembering her mother's voice, her mother's smile, her mother's last words before she left. "Come back safe," her mother had said. "I will," Ara had promised. She had kept that promise. 10,000 years too late, but she had kept it. A woman approached her while she stood there. She was old, with white hair and kind eyes. "Are you Song Ara?" the woman asked. "From the Eternal Dawn?" "Yes." The woman smiled. "My name is Song. I am your family. Your mother's line continued through her younger sister. We have been waiting for you. Ara stared at her. You knew I might come back. Everyone knew. Every generation we told our children the story. We told them that one day Song Ara would come home and we would be there to welcome her. Took her hand. Welcome home, grandmother. We have so much to show you. Ara let herself be led away, toward a family she had never met but who had never forgotten her. Han returned to medicine. The field had changed beyond recognition, but the core of it was the same. People got sick, people got hurt, and doctors helped them. She enrolled in a training program designed specifically for her, where she could learn 10,000 years of medical progress at her own pace. Her teachers were awed to have her in their classes. She was Dr. Han, whose field hospitals on the Eternal Dawn had kept everyone alive through the crisis. Her techniques had been studied and taught for. I just did what needed to be done, she told them, embarrassed by the attention. That is exactly why we admire you, they replied. Found his place in engineering. The technology was different, but the principles were the same. Things broke. Someone had to fix them, and had spent his whole life fixing things. He was given a position on a deep space construction project, building a new space station at the edge of the galaxy. The work was hard and dangerous, exactly the way he liked it. You could retire, the project manager told him. You have earned rest. Rest is for dead people, replied, picking up his tools. I am still alive, so I work. Accepted a position at the Institute of Gravitational Physics, the same institute that bore her name. She worked alongside scientists who had studied her equations their entire lives. Together, they pushed the boundaries of knowledge even further. One day, she made a breakthrough, a new equation that solved a problem no one had been able to crack for centuries. How did you figure it out? Her colleagues asked. Smiled. I had 10,000 years of your work to build on. You did the hard part. I just found the missing piece. The youngest of them all took the longest to find her path. She wandered through museums and libraries, reading everything she could about the history she had missed. She visited other planets and met people from cultures that had not existed when she was born. And slowly she began to write. She wrote about her experience, not as a hero, but as a young woman who had been scared and confused and far from home. She wrote about their kindness and courage and small moments of grace. She wrote about the black hole, beautiful and terrible. She wrote about waiting and hopping and refusing to give up. Her book was published a year after her return. It became the most widely read book in human history. Captain Park turned down every honor offered to him. He did not want to be an admiral or a politician or a symbol. He had been a captain, and that was enough. Instead, he asked for one thing, a ship and a mission. They gave him a small vessel, fast and comfortable, with room for a crew of 12. His crew, the original crew of the Eternal Dawn, all of whom agreed to join him. Their mission was simple. They would travel to the black hole that had once trapped them, not to study it, but to visit the memorial that humanity had built there. The journey took 3 days. They traveled through folded space, crossing distances that would have taken them years in their original ship. When they arrived, they found something beautiful. An orbital station hung in space, far enough from the black hole to be safe but close enough to see it clearly. The station was shaped like a ring, and on its surface were written the names of every person who had ever been lost in space. Millions of names, stretching back thousands of years. At the center of the ring, in the largest letters, were 12 names. Their names. Docked his ship and led his crew onto the station. They walked through halls filled with flowers and light, past walls covered with messages from people across the galaxy. Thank you for showing us how to hope. You taught my great-grandmother to never give up. Because of you, I became an explorer. We will always remember. They reached the central chamber, where a great window looked out at the black hole. The same black hole that had tried to swallow them. The same darkness that had stolen 10,000 years from their lives. But now, instead of fear, felt only peace. An inscription was carved into the floor, the same words that had been spoken when the memorial was first built, 8,000 years ago. For the crew of the Eternal Dawn who fell into darkness so that we might find the light, we never forgot, we never stopped reaching. Stood before the inscription, his crew beside him. They had lost everything, their families, their time, their world, but they had found something too, a humanity that had not forgotten them, a future that had been built on their hope. We drifted for hours, he said quietly, his voice echoing in the chamber. Just a few hours from our perspective. We thought no one would remember us. We thought we would be forgotten. He turned to look at his crew, who had found his sister's words. Ara, who had found her family, who had found her purpose, who had found his work, who had found her legacy, who had found her voice. But they waited for us, he continued. For 10,000 years they waited. They built ships and stations and monuments. They studied and learned and grew. And when they finally had the power to reach us, they came. Stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. That is what humanity does, Captain. We wait, we remember, and we never give up on our own. Smiled, feeling tears in his eyes, not sad tears, happy ones. No, he agreed, we never do. They stood together at the window, 12 humans who had become legends not through great deeds but through simple endurance. Outside, the black hole spun endlessly, beautiful and terrible, a reminder of how small they were in the face of the universe. But they were not alone. They had never been alone. Across 4,000 worlds and 3 galaxies, 12 billion people carried their story in their hearts. And that story would continue, passed down through generations, for as long as humans existed. They had fallen into the abyss. And humanity had built a ladder to bring them back. The stars stretched endlessly around them, bright and welcoming. They were home,